Alright, time for another draft. Physics.com, debatephysics.com also. Video presentation. Science video, but frankly, there just isn't anyone who wants to discuss science. Science has just become dogmatic religion, and you can't say anything critiquing the method or process or whatever the mob says, and it cannot evolve, can't be improved, can't be anything unless the six people running the show allow it to happen. And there's no way to get to those six people and persuade them they've made mistakes, and they just don't want to hear about it. So I have, in my opinion, done more than should be required in a reasonable community of thinking people to indicate there's good reason to re-examine most all of the axioms of science now, or physics particularly, and the whole arguments of wave-particle duality and the energy duality of kinetic energy, mv squared, versus just momentum running the universe. And it all comes down to this idea of whether you think the universe is made out of discrete mechanical bits, that it is elemental, that it doesn't go forever, and that it is a mechanism. And you can identify all the parts, and if you could identify every little thing and know what every little thing is doing, you can clearly predict what would happen, because the rules are really simple and the mechanical device is very simple. So this simulation I have had running in different ways, but it always has been doing the same thing for a couple of years, and that is, it illustrates perfectly what charges would do. If you could make an electron and proton, they're behaving as you could expect, and without all of the wooey bits. So just the Maxwellian idea of almost thinking of them as magnetic monopoles rather than electric ones, but it doesn't really matter. That they, the likes repel and the dissimilars attract, and there's a very simple mechanical mechanism that allows that to happen. It doesn't have to be a mystery. So I've demonstrated a way to do it just with two kinds of force and two kinds of matter, and just three interactions: a reflection, an absorption, and a transition, where you just change the identity of the force bit. Anyway, it works, and it works, I can say the word, pretty much perfectly in terms of it's illustrating right now what would be called the strong force, in the sense that all you need to do is put an electron between two protons, and you don't have any problem getting the protons really close together. You don't need an external force, a special new force to push them together. The universe does it all on its own, just by, essentially, you could just argue, having a gravitational force. That is, having force in the universe, and it's going to hit everything from every side and push everything into everything. And so it works, and you can't get people to even look at it. Scientists, the science presenters, can't even get them to look, let alone take enough time to say, oh, that's a mechanical explanation. That's a lot better than just wooey forces, magical forces make it happen. Anyway, and so this relates very much to the dispute between the argument that can be made that there was nothing wrong with Descartes, Galileo, and Newton's physics in terms of recognizing the concept of momentum, and that it was momentum that was conserved in the universe. And Leibniz didn't win this argument while he was alive, but he won it after he was dead. And he didn't win it through any kind of meritorious good physics. It was just all this dogmatic religion. They just say it's so. They never demonstrate it so. So for 350 years, they've been saying, okay, that 4 pounds dropped 1 foot is the same as 1 pound dropped 4 feet. And they've never even done the experiment. I mean, there's no documented experimental experiment. There's none, where they actually measure this to see that it's actually true. And as I've pointed out, things like a balance, thousands of years old, says it can't be true because it says different relationships are equal. It says a 1 mass going 4 velocity is the same as a 4 mass going 1 velocity, and not a 1 mass going 2 velocity. That's a lot short, 50% short. Anyway, and all so I've made lots of arguments, and it's in a playlist. I'll leave below the 6 arguments I've made. There's also a bunch of 5-minute videos that hit these subjects on the debatephysics.com, and you can't get a reasonable response to any of it. It's all way undercooked physics. They just make the assertion. They don't have to prove anything. They can just keep saying it's the most proven theory in the history of mankind, and they haven't proven anything. They say it's the most precise calculations and blah blah blah, and that has to do with one experiment where it's not like they just took out a ruler and measured it. Okay, it's not even. It's just an experiment far more complicated than measuring a 4 mass dropped 1 foot and a 1 mass dropped 4 feet. A lot more complicated. Okay. And so it's all quite circular. You can go into all the other formulas they contrived to fit with mv squared, so the work equation, and mgh, the definition of how gravity is acquired, and it's just plainly wrong. It's not about how high something is. It's about how long it will be allowed to freely collect gravity. And that's all that matters. It's a time-dependent force. I mean, I could say this over and over again. It's just so frickin' clear. It's 9.8 meters per every 1 second. How can you get 4 units in 2 seconds? How can you get 4 chunks of gravitational force if you're only in the gravity 2 seconds? And it's clear, in the sense that the velocity is only twice the velocity, it's only twice the time in gravity, and yet they say it collected 4 times the energy. So I've pointed out that there are pieces of pretty strong reason to doubt at minimum. That should be the expectation. Reasonable people should be disturbed by experiments that are decisively in contrast to what they claim. So the Mythbusters went to the trouble of crashing cars for a completely different purpose. They didn't intend to prove there's no kinetic energy, but that's what they did. And they crashed a 50-mile-an-hour car, then a 100-mile-an-hour, same car, same, all the stuff the same, and no evidence of kinetic energy. Just momentum. Twice the speed, twice the damage to the car. Every indication that there's good reason to doubt the silly theory, the silly formula. So there really isn't any difference between physics and flat earth science, in the sense that it's just another dogmatic statements made by people. They don't care what the evidence shows. They don't care that they can't produce any evidence. The flat earthers can't produce any satellite photos of the flat earth. They don't launch any satellites. To prove it to us that the rest were all frauds and fakes. So it really is in the same class. I mean, obviously, I guess I would say it's not quite as extreme, but, in some ways it's worse. They've had 350 years to create some evidence, to drop 4 pounds 1 foot and 1 pound 4 feet. They've had 350 years to produce a piece of evidence, and they just won't do it. They haven't done it, and they won't do it. Just like the Eddington experiment, for example, with Einstein's, light is bent twice as much by gravity theory. Again, if they would have done the experiment when they wanted to, if the war didn't get in the way and they did it 2 years earlier, Einstein would have been proven wrong because his theory changed in those 2 years. And he went from light is bent the same as regular matter to twice as much. And again, you could argue that they really don't have any hard evidence that light is ever bent, that any force can be bent by a force. And you just keep saying it's true, it's true, it's true. We all have to believe, and frankly, simpler models work better, and they don't require magical substances. They don't require magical functions. It can be understood that the universe is a mechanical device, and that the little crap in it is conserved, and it's just transitioning through the process of obeying simple rules and evolving in that simple environment. There's just so many subjects where you can just point out how, they're just so deceptive. So even in the entanglement argument, where Einstein says spooky action at a distance, well, the first argument you could make is no piece of matter could travel distance. I couldn't send an electron this way, an electron that way, and have any hope of creating distance between them without them being de-entangled. That was a sloppy transition. Anyway, the whole idea of the spooky action thing, right? So if you have a material object, you can figure out sort of that it is in a very noisy universe, and there's no way that anything wouldn't be interacting with that noisy universe, and that's the same thing as having your picture taken. There's really no difference. Gravity hitting you, photons hitting you, bouncing off. You don't need to have film in the camera for the thing to have been basically required to be one thing or another thing. So this whole idea that it can have some ambiguous state and exist in this noisy universe is kind of idiotic, especially at any kind of distance. Like it could travel some kind of faraway distance and it didn't interact with anything. Neither party interacted with anything. There's no real chance of it. So again, this whole idea of what an interaction is that de-entangles you, you can't avoid them. So it's like the Schrodinger cat example. Oh, let's just put it in a box. Well, what if the box is, invisible to ultraviolet light but visible to infrared? Oh, well then I can still see the cat. Yeah, so it's just playing games with what kind of force is able to hit the cat. And, obviously I would argue that gravity always hits everything. So it's been outed. And it, the fact that there's no film, there's no camera, doesn't change the fact that its picture was taken by the universe. And it had to be de-entangled. Ooh. Anyway, it's such a bad idea. This is their physics, okay? It's all this wooey mystery, phantasmagorical, special forcey do special things that don't make any sense. They invent a gluon that hits something and pulls it in the opposite direction from its own momentum. Just what the, stuff that just can't make any sense to reasonable people. Anyway, I guess I will start doing some more videos on entanglement and the essential experiment, which is the double slit experiment, in photons, of course, and how it isn't what they claim it to be. And it's really easy to tell that they bend and twist the truth in terms of, ignoring just obvious facts that, when you have a wave, if you're going to do vectors from that wave, you do vectors from the center of the wave. You don't do vectors from the edges of the wave. That's not where the wave is. The wave leaves proportional to the center. And so they'll draw a picture of, a two-slit experiment, and the picture doesn't have anything to do with the actual math that gets the right answer. in terms of the location of where you're going to draw your vectors from. And so it's so obvious that it's just obvious anyway to somebody literate in some of these subjects. I wish it would have been more obvious to me 15 years ago, and then maybe I could have expedited this whole process, but it's certainly obvious to me now in hindsight, in better sight, that if you really analyze their math, it doesn't match their own drawings. Their own simulations don't match what they claim to be the mechanics. And then so that's an obvious giveaway. And what it really shows is that the truth they won't tell you is that the surfaces are causing the entire phenomenon. And it doesn't have anything to do with any kind of, you don't have to worry about things going through an opening, because the only thing they're doing is interacting with a hard surface. And again, that was sort of proven by the fact that you could make the pattern by using a needle or some other solid impediment, and you'd still get the pattern because you have two surfaces. And that's all that matters, is the distance between the surfaces. The surfaces are the point sources. They're the origin of the vectors that matter. And so you have to describe a circumstance where somehow the surfaces are the cause. It's not, the cause isn't some idea that something's in two places at once, or and it's traveling through both slits and all of that crap. All right, I'll take a pause and we'll get to some other practical concerns. Alright, so I do, YouTube has blocked me from commenting and ruined my subscriptions and different things that I can't function, as I used to. But anyway, so in the bright side is that in viewing videos in private windows, they end up auto-playing after I play a video, and you end up getting this random stuff. And anyway, so a few of these videos came up as related videos, and this Robertson Earhart guy, who I don't really get it. I don't know why exactly. He has very broad view numbers, from some videos at 3,000, some videos 60,000. But he has really good rate guests. I mean, he's Sean Carroll and all the big names show up to this guy's podcast, which does surprise me. Leonard Susskind, but anyway, so I guess the podcast gets enough listeners that somehow this is where people go to sell their books. But anyway, it's just another place where I'd like to leave a comment. I couldn't find his email address, so apparently you have to leave a. So I was just thinking, I'll leave the playlist link in the description, and for the last 6 videos I made on the subject of kinetic energy. And if somebody could just, maybe post the playlist or do something to indicate that maybe this guy should give, the opposing opinion should give it some airtime, as a little bit of fairness, that all this crap these physicists talk is just that. And it could be shown to be just, it's so weakly evidenced, and the very fact that they won't even admit that they're really jumping the evidence, right? This is conclusion way before the evidence, not the other way around. That the evidence isn't forcing them to draw these conclusions; they are jumping to them, and that's really not very scientific, and it's clearly not scientific when you decide to say everybody else has to shut up. Only we can talk. Only we can propose our whatever it is. And it's just really bad science, frankly. So I don't know what this picture is of. This gray blob up here. That's very weird. Anyway, yeah, so it's, so there's all these other places too, and again, so let's just remember well, I guess I should go to the website anyway. We'll do a couple of points from there. But yes, I've tried every way possible to get a fair chance to argue against this woo physics, and they just won't give you the chance. So even if you're offering them thousands of dollars just to give me a fair opportunity to perhaps trigger somebody with integrity in your audience who might actually care about the truth and care that their physics isn't well evidenced, and frankly is terribly evidenced in most cases. I mean, the evidence is junk. All right, I'll be back. All right, just a quick look at the debate physics. Again, it's really simple website. I don't intend it to be flashy or to do anything. It's just a link to some specific videos that I think get to the subject, blah, blah, blah. And there's these, whatever it is, 14 videos just talking about the different ways in which 1/2 mv squared fails as a formula. It's not true, and there's lots of ways you can understand it doesn't work. And so they're all simple explanations of isolated experiments that are not confirming evidence for any notion that energy quadratically grows with velocity. Alright, so this is the draft physics website, and everything's made really simple again. I mean, it's not too hard to see. There's subjects, you pick a subject, and these were all videos made in responses to Wikipedia pages, as Wikipedia banned me for life, okay, because I dared to want to discuss the physics in the pages they're propagandizing. And I had, in my opinion, perfectly valid arguments that what they were stating isn't actually true in many cases, and much of the speculation is just that, speculation, and it shouldn't be presented as if they have some experimental evidence. Which brings me to the subject. I've been recently reading some of Joules. The Joule was named after a guy. And the story they told about him is really way off. I mean, he wasn't just some brewer who became a scientist. I mean, he was doing this as a kid, especially with the subject of electricity, he was quite fascinated by that. So it's funny that some of the history you get is just such garbage. And he's writing papers when he was 21. So I don't know why they portray him as some kind of outsider when he was clearly an insider. But anyway, but I was reading, and so there's a whole part where he's talking about the living force, and then he's talking about God. He's also a religious kook, and but the whole story is he's just saying things just like Leibniz. He's just telling me what is going to happen. He doesn't have evidence that it's going to happen that way. So he talks about a train going 70 miles an hour and how that's 100 times the energy of a train going 7 miles an hour. That kind of crap, frankly. Where he didn't do the experiment. He has no evidence that's the way it works. So it's just demonstrates. It's all just stories they tell. It's not stuff they base it on facts and make sure what they're speculating to be the truth or claiming to be the truth or stating as a definition is accurate. Alright, so the 2 plus 2 plus 2 physics is really the mostly overview of just the idea that a particle theory of the function of the universe does work. I mean, a discrete quanta. So Einstein was really great in the sense that he defined this word quanta and this idea that you have a quantum of energy, and that's what makes stuff happen. And because it is that simple. There's energy, and then there's matter, and the two interact. And that's what makes the universe. And both of them are conserved. All right, debate physics, and then my YouTube videos. And so yeah, here's the $2,000 challenge. So I'm not offering it anymore, because you don't get what you're paying for, frankly. But all these people, and there's a ton of people I offered money to. I don't even have it listed here, but I offered Thunderfoot $4,000, and I offered Veritasium 4,000. So I did up it, but it's a lot of money, and none of these people would take my money just to play a 5-minute video, just to deal with the subject. So all kinds of people I did email and tried to solicit some interest in this subject, and none of them would in any way pay any attention whatsoever, and it's just very disappointing. And so then there are the cowards, so that's also a link here somewhere. Profiles in cowardice. So some people did actually respond, at least I got a response from them, but it was junk. Okay, they just dismiss everything. And so he says, I will gladly debunk this flaming pile of garbage from an insane person for $5,000. I mean, obviously he's not worth that. But again, there's nothing. There's all this talk, but there's no go. You can't get them to make the argument. You can't force them in any way through humiliation or any other kind of method to deal with the real point, which is make a video saying, here is absolute proof that 1/2 mv squared is accurate and real. It's a very valid formula, and they won't make that video. So all these people just ran away from the subject with just putrid, dismissive rhetoric. So they're the real flat earthers, and they're just running away from an argument they can't do anything with. You point out that, do you really believe it takes 25 times the fuel to spin something 5 times as fast? I don't see how any rational physicist could argue that's real. So this guy, this AB Science, I used the word thrust and pointed out, well, how does thrust work in space, right? When somebody's navigating in space, are they calculating mv squared, or are they calculating momentum? And he pretended he didn't know what thrust was. I had to explain it to him. And then, yes, the giant douche of Simon Dan. We just saw him. I don't know for what reason he actually decided to make a video pointed at me, but it wasn't on my physics. It was just on the fact that I was critiquing his video style of making fun of retarded and psychotic people, and I thought that's kind of disgusting. That you ought to find a better job than that, a better way to make money than to ridicule, obviously, people of insufficient stability mentally. And I offer, please do me, debunk what I actually say. And so he played a little tiny bit, 60 seconds of what I said, and basically just said, ha ha, he's wrong, and ran away again. So that's all you get. So in years of doing this is all there is this garbage rhetoric, and no counter arguments to what's actually stated. Now to this guy, this Dr. Michael Koop, did try a couple of experiments, but chicanery did get involved. He wouldn't do it exactly the way it needed to be done to clarify the issue, and he did go to the trouble to buy a big Newton's cradle to make one. But he never videoed it, never finished it, and one can imagine, because it wasn't going his way. And now he's just silent on all subjects. So I guess he's doing his cosmological research regarding whatever signals from space. Beep 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 beep. Anyway, just horrible people. Anyway, all right. So I guess so that's the 2 + 2 + 2 physics, and just an overview. and some sort of little statements here and there about the other subjects, but I mean they're all here. And the photon subject has the two slit stuff in it, and lots of explanations regarding how that their theory is complete garbage, and that it can be understood as just a mechanical function, that photons are composite objects. All you're doing really is breaking them and then remaking them. You're scattering the pieces a little bit, and then it is possible to undo what you did and recreate photons, rebuild them. Anyway, alright, so that's probably enough of a video, but nothing can happen. I mean, I can't, it'd be nice if some of you people who actually do think there's some physics here that should be discussed, that you would poke at these institution people and say, why don't you deal with these arguments? I mean, why don't you deal with the fact that your theory is way under evidenced and it can legitimately be challenged, and you don't seem at all interested in hearing those challenges and responding to them with something called reasoning and logic. And of course, it would be nice if they had some evidence. Besides just saying it's the most proven theory in the history of mankind, it'd be nice if they showed us the proof. Alright, so probably enough of a video, but it is very discouraging. This atmosphere is just demonstrating that people are just religious fanatics. I mean, there's people defending this who don't really understand the science. They're just doing it because it's a mob, and they don't think the mob could be wrong, because it's such a great mob and they are so disciplined. And you just argue, how could you have any confidence in these people? The deGrasse Tysons, all these people, they're just mouthing what they've been taught. They're not creators. They haven't thought about any of this stuff. They haven't even done the experiments. I mean, Richard Feynman couldn't draw a decent two-slit pattern to save his life. I mean, his understanding of it was so superficial, and yet he was an authority on the subject. I mean, just kind of amazing. Not kind of amazing, it was absolutely amazing. Alright, so, yeah, that's much to say. Anyway, so, till the next time and such, and so forth, and whatnot. Blah, 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 blah. The internet sucks. Such.